café was quiet that rainy afternoon. Raindrops clung to the large glass windows as if the sky itself were trying to peer inside. A young girl's laughter rang out from the corner table, where a man in his early 30s sat with a battered chessboard. His name was Daniel Carter, a single dad who had spent the last 5 years balancing fatherhood, odd jobs, and the stubborn determination to give his little daughter Lily the life she deserved. Daniel wasn't wealthy. His clothes were clean but worn, his shoes showing the mileage of long walks to work. But he had something no money could buy: love, patience, and a brilliant mind. Chess had been his only escape since childhood, a game his late father taught him when they could afford nothing else. Now, it was the bond he shared with Lily. That's when Clara Hayes entered the cafe. She wasn't just any customer, she was the CEO of Hayes Global, a billion-dollar company that most people only read about in the news. Dressed sharply in a Navy power suit, her very presence commanded attention. Clara was used to boardrooms, negotiations, and winning battles most people wouldn't dare fight. Yet, she carried a loneliness no one could see behind her polished image. She had come to the cafe for quiet, but instead, her eyes were drawn to Daniel and Lily. The little girl leaned forward, grinning mischievously as she moved a pawn, declaring, "Check." Daniel chuckled, "Not quite yet, sweetheart." Clara, intrigued, walked closer. Chess was her secret passion, one of the few things in her life that had nothing to do with money or power. For years, she had beaten investors, rivals, even professional players at charity events. It was her way of proving she could outthink anyone. "Mind if I join?" she asked smoothly, her voice confident, carrying the authority of someone used to getting what she wanted. Daniel looked up, a little surprised. "Sure," he said politely. "But my daughter's pretty good. You might lose." Clara smirked. "I don't lose." The game began. At first, Clara played with her usual pride, making swift moves that signaled control. But soon she realized Daniel wasn't just good, he was extraordinary. He saw traps 3 moves ahead, anticipated her strategies, and countered them with a calmness she found unsettling. "You play like someone who studied for years," she remarked, narrowing her eyes. Daniel simply shrugged. "Life teaches you patterns. Chess is just practice for recognizing them." The game drew a small crowd in the cafe. The barista, a few regulars, even Lily watched wide-eyed as the battle of intellects unfolded. For Clara, this was more than a game. It was her identity on the line. For Daniel, it was just another puzzle to solve. And then, with a gentle push of his rook, Daniel softly said, "Checkmate." The cafe erupted in whispers. Clara leaned back, stunned. No one had beaten her in years. For the first time in a long time, she felt something she rarely did: humility. But instead of anger, she smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "You've beaten me, and I always keep my word," she said, half teasing, half serious. "Beat me in chess and I'll marry you." That was the deal. The cafe went silent. Daniel blinked in surprise, his jaw tightening, but his reply wasn't what anyone expected. "Marriage isn't a prize you win in a game," he said quietly, his voice steady. "And I won't marry anyone because of a bet. My daughter deserves better than that. I deserve better than that. And so do you." The Clara froze. For a woman who had everything, no one had ever dared speak to her like that. Not investors, not employees, not even men who claimed to love her. Everyone wanted something from her: money, status, power. But here was a man who had just won, who could have claimed her words, yet instead he rejected the very idea because he valued dignity over victory. Something inside her shifted. From that day forward, Clara returned to the cafe. Not as a CEO, but as Clara, the woman who loved chess. She played with Daniel, laughed with Lily, and slowly, without realizing it, found herself drawn to the warmth of the family she had never known. Weeks turned into months. She learned about Daniel's struggles, how his wife had passed away when Lily was a baby, how he worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table, and how chess was the one thing that gave him peace when the world felt too heavy. Daniel, in turn, learned about her loneliness, that beneath the glamorous headlines and ruthless boardroom deals was a woman who had built walls so high that no one ever truly saw her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara watched Daniel teaching Lily another chess trick. The little girl's eyes sparkled with joy, her laughter filling the room. Clara's chest tightened. She realized she wasn't watching a game anymore. She was watching love in its purest form. Finally, one day, it wasn't Clara who proposed a bet. It was Daniel. "Clara," he said softly, looking her in the eyes, "this time no games, no bets. just honesty. You've become part of our lives, whether you meant to or not. And if you feel the same, then maybe we can build something real, together. Clara's eyes shimmered. For once in her life, she didn't feel like a CEO or a woman who had to prove herself. She felt like someone who had been chosen. Not for her wealth, not for her power, but for her heart. And with tears slipping down her cheeks, she whispered, "Yes." The story spread first through the cafe regulars, then through whispers across the city. People admired the billionaire CEO who had been humbled by a single dad with nothing but a chessboard and a heart full of love. But more than that, they admired the man who proved that dignity and integrity will always outweigh money and pride. Because in the end, life isn't about winning games, it's about finding someone who sees you for who you truly are. And for Clara and Daniel, the real checkmate wasn't on the chessboard, it was in the moment their hearts aligned.